Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. This is an office hours stream where we talk with people in the chat live at twitch.tv/socialism S4A. If you're not following already, go ahead on Twitch and hit that follow button or subscribe or whatever it is. One of them is paid. I can't remember. Anyway, just hit the thing that notifies you when we go live. Got about 41 people in the chat right now, and we're going to just do our weekly chat, basically. Normally these occur on Thursdays, and the normal time is Thursday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then it was for a long time 8 p.m. UTC GMT, but the U.S. Went off of daylight savings time, so we dropped back an hour, and so it was 7 for a while. I don't know, and then it's 9. I'm not really sure what's what it is in UTC. Somebody was saying 7, somebody else said 9. And I haven't actually had a chance to verify. But anyway, normally it's Thursday at that time. When we do stream, it's almost always at that time of day. Normally Thursday is the day that we stream. This week, I've kind of got a lot of stuff going on, as I was just telling the chat. That's why I haven't uploaded any audiobooks since the Hoja thing. Just really had my hands full, kind of more on the personal end. And I'm not going to be available tomorrow to stream. So, yeah, we will also, there's sort of a major holiday in the U.S. next week on a Thursday, so we're probably going to stream Wednesday then as well. Otherwise, we should be good with our weekly stream. And I must say, you know, I've been telling people for a long time I was trying to juggle Twitter and a lot of current events and doing the streams, and I was just getting overloaded, and we were doing, you know, 2 4-hour streams in a week, and I just really couldn't keep up with that. Since separating out and actually creating a new written component to handle current events on the community posts, on Substack, on Medium. The YouTube community post is where most of the written stuff goes. Some of it gets copied over to Medium, medium.com/@socialismforall. And Substack is socialismforall.substack.com. It's not fully part of my routine and flow yet, so not everything gets copied over there. But anyway, doing some of the current events as written posts, and then just doing a free-form stream, that is working great. And I think there will be absolutely no problem going with that in the future. I've also really cut Twitter out, aside from just doing announcements. So, you know, if you want to find me on social media, we're over on Blue Sky. By the way, if anyone in the chat needs a Blue Sky code, let me know. I actually have a ton of them. I can respond to that in just a minute. But, yeah, Blue Sky, Mastodon. We were on Tumblr for a minute. I don't know what happened to the account. But, yeah, so other places you can find the links wherever we're online. There's a pretty comprehensive list of links, actually in the video description of every video that we post on YouTube. All right, so, yeah, November 15, and it's 20 after. So the only news that I really wanted to share off the top of my head today is there was another bank failure. And we've been talking a lot about the coming economic crisis. So basically, we did a standalone video a while back about how basically the underlying conditions of the 2008 crash never really got resolved at the root level. They lowered interest rates to like 1%, dumped a bunch of money into the economy. It got things going again. It also created massive inflation, massive inequality, and completely distorted the housing market. The U.S. housing market is out of control, just like it was in 05, 06, 07, right before it started to absolutely tank and usher in the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis, global financial catastrophe, whatever you want to call it. But so we've got Citizens Bank out of Iowa becoming the 5th U.S. bank to fail in 2023. And I don't have a chart for you. I was just looking for one. I didn't find a neat chart. Saw one recently, but couldn't dig it back up again. Anyway, if you compare what's going on with Signature Bank, SVB, and the other banks that failed earlier in this year, back in like March, if you remember that, with 2008, the number of banks that failed in 08, 09, 2010 was much higher. Like several hundred banks failed then. Right now, only 5 banks have failed so far this year. However, the associated dollar amount of the assets involved in these failures is already bigger than 2008. So fewer banks, but that's what we've seen, isn't it? It's consolidation. Capital tends to consolidate over time. Every time that there's a financial crisis, the boom-bust cycle is sort of built into the system. There are winners and losers, and the winners wind up being able to buy up the assets at fire sale prices, and then they become bigger and bigger. And yeah, so what we've got going on in the economy right now, as far as the housing market is concerned, is not only, if you look at a chart like the Case-Shiller index, the biggest absolute price bubble in history, technically, so a bubble is massive overvaluation. Technically, you can only prove that it was overvalued after the fact, but there are a lot of indicators which are pretty reliable for suggesting that it is, in fact, a bubble and overvalued beforehand. And right now, every single alarm bell is going off. Not only is it the biggest absolute price bubble, but it's also the biggest bubble, even if you take the Case-Shiller and adjust it for inflation, it's even bigger than 2008, the bubble, or, well, really, 06 and 07. The bubble that is basically peaking now and just starting its decline, that is bigger than 2008 already as far as the dollar amounts involved and the overvaluation of housing. So when this comes down, it will probably be more painful, more disruptive, more catastrophic than 2008. Expect to see that probably starting next year, and then it plays out over the next 4 or 5 years. It could maybe hold out until 2025. However, there's a number of pretty ominous signs. So the Federal Reserve, after allowing inflation to get completely out of control, they have jacked up interest rates, which normally this happens, this heralds an incoming recession when they raise the interest rates and then they hold them high for a while, which they've been doing in 2023. It's when they start to cut the rates again that they basically the recession begins right after that. Because what they're saying is raising the rates, you can think of it like striking a match, and then you need the match to burn for a minute so you can go light the fuse. After the fuse has been lit, though, you don't need the match anymore, so you can blow that out. It's when they start cutting the rates that they say, well, we lit the fuse on this recession. We need to cool off the economy. It's too hot. This is another inherent flaw of capitalism. They can't let it get too productive or it'll put itself out of business. So yeah, the fuse has been lit. It's when they're blowing out the match. That's when you got to duck and cover. And so we're not quite there yet. What is currently expected by many investors is that they're going to be starting to cut the rates in May. So we got about 6 months maybe before that hits. But so as I mentioned, after 2008, they dumped a bunch of money in. Now they're raising the interest rates again. The low interest rates, free money, cheap money, basically kept the system on life support, but it also created gigantic inflation, completely unsustainable. The Fed has a target of 2% inflation. Like, they don't want to do deflation. They just want to keep the inflation to 2%, and it went way above that for a while. Anyway, as they start to rein that in, expect things to break. We don't know exactly what will break in the economy, but small to mid-sized banks are a pretty good bet. And lo and behold, Citizens Bank, just like the other ones that failed earlier this year, is another massive bank. This one was related to slowdowns and some loans that were made in the trucking, like freight sector, I believe. So why would that be the case with an economic downturn? Well, as consumer demand slows, like most people right now in the U.S. Are living paycheck to paycheck. They would, if they lost their job, run out of money within a month. A majority would. And then a third of people in the U.S. would run out of money within 1 week if they lost their job. Keep this in mind. It's very accurate and real that there are perks to living within the imperial core, and they do try to buy you off to a certain extent. And you can get some clothing cheaper and consumer products cheaper. The reality is life is still very, very unstable. So, don't lose sight of that. And we're looking at another 2008 type scenario where people will lose their homes and all kinds of terrible, things are going to happen. For people who've been waiting for the housing market to sort of unfreeze, become unparalyzed. This will be an opportunity, but then what happens is certain investors will consider it time to strike, and they'll be buying up properties, just like happened after 2008 when prices went real low. Complete mess, as this country has basically no restrictions on investors buying residential real estate. In other words, personal houses, and trying to, hold those for a profit, either to resell them or to try to rent them out. And this, to me, is a really interesting sociological sort of attempt at social engineering, if you will, on the part of big corporate landlords, including ones that are publicly traded. So there are like Wall Street companies that are some of the biggest landlords in the United States. And what they're trying to do is they bought up a bunch of housing, single-family houses. Some of them bought up tens of thousands of single-family houses, basically when things were really cheap, in the early 2010s or maybe even more recently. And they tried this new model of, well, we're not going to let people we're not going to let people buy houses anymore. We're going to rent people houses. And I've seen this just even in my area. I saw something recently where it's like a really nice house. Like, I would never be able to afford this house. It was like big. It looked kind of stately. And, I can't, probably a very expensive house. And it said for lease outside. And I'm just like scratching my head going, what are these corporate landlords thinking? That's not really how Americans think about housing. Like, if you could afford to rent that, you would just want to buy it. You know what I mean? So this whole weird thing of like, we will rent people individual houses. Now, like, renting people houses has always been a thing, but it's always been sort of an exception. It's not the dominant model. But anyway, these corporate landlords, they bought up all this housing and they tried to rent it out to people. It didn't go real well. And now they can get a better return on investment. Maybe they're getting 4% with a lot of expenses on some of their properties, like on their overall rental portfolio, when if they dumped those properties, liquidated, and then put the cash into like treasuries, they could immediately, now that the interest rates are higher, do better with that. So there's a gigantic sell-off coming of housing, and the housing market is about to get fast and furious, like in the near term, like next 1 to 2 years. Anyway, in the meantime, lots of shakeups in small and medium banking. So anyway, back to the why did this fail and the trucking thing. As consumer confidence slows down, and it definitely is, as people are basically clinging to life economically on a household-to-household basis, there's less demand for freight. Also, there is, fewer goods need to be shipped out. Economic activity slows down. Also, oil prices have been going up. So this is an issue with, first there was the issue with Russia last year and the sanctions and restrictions on Russian oil. Then the OPEC countries deliberately started tightening supply. Anyway, so there was a lot of tension and stress economically within the transportation sector. And apparently that was what pretty much was underlying Citizens Bank. So is it an isolated thing, or is this just the canary in the coal mine of a larger systemic phenomenon to come? Time will tell. I think I definitely wouldn't rule out the possibility that other banks are in similar positions of risk, and some of them will be able to, be agile enough and reposition themselves to survive this particular round of musical chairs. Other ones will get caught in the crosshairs, and they won't be so lucky. So let's read this short article quickly. Citizens Bank becomes the 5th U.S. bank to fail in 2023. The 2 branches of Citizens Bank will reopen as branches of Iowa Trust and Savings Bank on Monday during normal business hours. So it's basically getting taken over. The banking crisis continues in the U.S. as another regional American bank shuts shop. The government has shut down Citizens Bank due to financial issues, allowing the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, to take control without providing any public warning. So this was very much under the radar. I actually caught this news last night only, and this happened November 3rd. So that was almost 2 weeks ago. Very much under the radar, and again, word was just kind of starting to spread nationally like this week. So keeping this one under wraps, but news is breaking now. Citizens Bank is the 5th bank to close down in the nation this year. The failed banks list shows Heartland Tri-State Bank, First Republic Bank, Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and First Citizens Bank as other banks shut down in 2023. The shutdown started on March 10, 2023, with First Citizens Bank going down under. No, I don't. They went to Australia, going under. That's kind of funny. The FDI statement, Citizens Bank, Sac City, Iowa, was closed today. Oh, so this is the FDIC statement. Citizens Bank in Sac City, Iowa, was closed today by the Iowa Division of Banking, which appointed the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation as the receiver. To protect depositors, the FDIC entered into a purchase and assumption agreement with Iowa Trust and Savings Bank, Emmitsburg, Iowa, to assume all the deposits of Citizens Bank. The 2 branches of Citizens Bank will reopen as branches of Iowa Trust and Savings Bank on Monday during normal business hours. This evening and over the weekend, depositors of Citizens Bank can access their money by writing checks or by using ATM or debit cards. Checks drawn on the bank will continue to be processed. Loan customers should continue to make their payments as usual. Depositors of Citizens Bank will become depositors of Iowa Trust and Savings Bank, so customers do not need to change their banking relationship in order to retain their deposit insurance coverage. Customers of Citizens Bank should continue to use their existing branch until they receive notice from Iowa Trust and Savings Bank that it has completed systems changes to allow its branch offices to process their accounts as well. As of September 30, 2023, Citizens Bank had approximately $66 million in total assets and $59 million in total deposits. In addition to assuming all of the deposits, Iowa Trust and Savings Bank agreed to purchase essentially all of the failed bank's assets. The FDIC estimates that the cost to the Deposit Insurance Fund will be $14.8 million. Compared to other alternatives, Iowa Trust and Savings Bank's acquisition was the least costly resolution for the DIF, an insurance fund created by Congress in 1933 and managed by the FDIC to protect the deposits at the nation's banks. Citizens Bank is the 5th bank to fail in the nation this year. The last failure in Iowa was Polk County Bank, Johnston, Iowa, on November 18, 2011. So a small bank, and there are Citizens Bank, I mean, there are banks by that name in various parts of the country. This was a pretty small one, but again, canary in the coal mine, possibly. I would keep an eye on this because basically they've been doing quantitative easing, massive amounts of quantitative easing, in fact, since about 2010 to get things rolling again. And they're up to $9 trillion at this point, roughly, or that was at least at the recent peak. It was $9 trillion. And the problem with the quantitative easing, which was really an experimental, very new approach that they tried after 2008, the credit crunch, to get things rolling again, was, they dump all this money into the economy. They can't get it out, though. They have tried to do quantitative tightening, the reverse, several times, and each time they've tried to do that, something major has broken. In 2018, when they were doing quantitative tightening, trying to get some of that money back out of the economy, get the Fed's balance sheet lower, well, they got about 7 or 8% into it, and then there was repo madness in September 2019. So as far as the pandemic goes, yeah, there was obviously economic disruption due to a public health crisis and public health interventions that kept people home for a while because of a serious virus, which incidentally is still circulating. Check biobot.io/data for updates. They did lose their main contract, but they are still going, and there are other wastewater tracking sites as well. But so there was the public health intervention, but even prior to that, the U.S. economy was headed for a recession anyway. If you look at the inverted yield curve of the Treasury bonds, which is a classic signal of an incoming recession, that was in place. Incidentally, just have, actually, I think it's still current right now, massive inverted yield curve. So big pain incoming. And it's the small and medium banks that probably are going to get hit first in this case. Again, here's a small Iowa bank. Now, is it possible that they were just playing too fast and loose? Yeah, maybe. This could be an isolated case. But, time will tell what else pops up. All right, that's pretty much it for my opening screed today. We can get into the chat. But first, I just want to thank the patrons and buymeacoffee.com supporters. So if you'd like to get your name on the screen like these fine folks, patreon.com/socialismforall or buymeacoffee.com/socialismforall. You can support for just a few dollars a month or more, whatever you see fit. Every donation is helpful, encouraging, helps me to find the the wherewithal to keep trucking on. We're coming up on 4 years in February of doing this channel. It's been an amazing, very educational journey for me. I have gotten to know a lot of people through internet contacts during this process. Know a lot more about Marxism, Marxism-Leninism than I did 4 years ago before starting this thing. Want to thank everybody who's been a supporter in one way or another, but especially the financial supporters, because they allow me to devote a lot more time to the channel and have over the years than I would have been able to do without it. I, of course, would have done some kind of videos because I'm very interested in this topic, but again, the kind of regular weekly attention, that is thanks to the financial supporters. This channel is also ad-free, viewer-supported, non-commercial, so if you have a couple of spare bucks, drop in and we'll give you a credit, and greatly appreciated. Know that your contribution is part of the fabric of this thing that we are building that is spreading over more and more sites, SoundCloud, Medium, Spotify, everywhere that we're going on the internet. That is called Socialism for All. All right, there we go. Let's get into today's chat. What do we got? What do we got? I hope everyone is having a wonderful day so far. I think I can support that. Within reason. I mean, I don't know what everyone's idea of a wonderful day is, but, for the most part, I think that's tenable. And yeah, just reminding everybody, don't feed the trolls. I don't mind some amount of adversarial people coming into the chat. Usually, though, it's just more sockdems. Like we often get people who are like, hi, I live in Germany, I live in Norway. My country is socialist. Why are you a communist? And we're like, no, your country is not socialist. It's capitalist. The capitalists just made a few concessions to like the labor unions, but they are repealing them as fast as they can in this post-2008 austerity environment. And you better believe, that impending financial crash in the next few years. After that in the U.S., we saw the rise of the Tea Party as a political movement, the crypto-fash becoming not so crypto anymore. That, of course, morphed into the birthers and then into MAGA. And, the increasing open fascization of the country as the system goes into deeper and deeper crisis. That's going to, that ramped up significantly after 2008. It's going to get even worse. It'll make another quantum leap forward after, the 2024, 2025, whatever it is, crash. So, yeah, I don't mind a few sockdems. We can kind of talk to people within the broader left. Obviously, people come in and they're just like, socialism sucks. Like, okay, bye. Get out of the stream. You're banned. If there's somebody really disrupting the chat, just kind of ping a mod. Shakespeare or Health Revolt, I think, are here today. Brit also, if Brit is here or shows up. And they can help you out. Yeah, don't feed the trolls. And thank you to the mods for keeping things moderate. And yes, Shakespeare does have a Discord server. People ask sometimes, S4A, do you have a Discord server? No, I do not. I think that many of them, unless they're very heavily moderated and get a lot of weeding and attention, turn very toxic very easily because they're oftentimes full of people who never, ever log off. I do not want to encourage people to spend more time online. I think that there are good Discord servers out there that are well-tended and well-managed, but I'm not a big Discord user in the first place, so I would be going way out of my way to do that, and it's just not really something I want to encourage. There's already enough S4A comment sections out there, and people can DM if they really want to have a conversation or something. But yeah, no, we don't run a Discord and probably never will. Financial news outlets often tend to be good on COVID coverage as well, interestingly enough. Well, I think because they're aimed at investors, not the general public, and they have to speak in real terms. Like, if people who are betting millions of dollars on various projects are, dealing in fantasy, not reality, they will lose those millions of dollars and they'll be very unhappy. So they tend to be more realistic. Now, whether they actually share the full truth with the public, that's another story. But yeah, if you dig around in the financial stuff, it tends to be a bit more grounded in reality as far as COVID. Like Forbes, for example, has a columnist, William Hazelton, who has been very, very good covering COVID. I haven't actually read his stuff in a while now. I kind of checked out on COVID current events earlier this year at the beginning of the lull. I really just needed a break from reading it. Like, I got it. I still mask. Stay up to date on your vaccines. That's plan B. Plan A is masking. And again, you need the plan B in case you have a mask failure. Straps break. Things happen. And it's called N95 for a reason. There's that other 5%. But, yeah, in general, you want to mask and you want to do that. I just had to take a break from, I feel like we did a lot of COVID coverage. And at a certain point, I was just like, okay, I get it. Like, COVID fucks you up. It kills your T cells. It causes immune system depletion. It causes lung damage, brain damage, you name it. I was like, all right, got it. There came a point where I just felt like I wasn't really gaining any particular, groundbreaking new knowledge. And but I really salute the folks who keep up with it, whether it's Meet Jess on Twitter, Data Report on Twitter and YouTube, who I also link to in the YouTube channels tab. I don't know if anybody listens to Data Report. What's up, everybody? I love that guy. Honestly, love that guy. But he doggedly brings, COVID reports pretty much on a daily basis, I think, and also shares a lot of news on Twitter. There's a variety of people who are in Don Ford, who are, in the Twitter, long COVID Twitter network. I recommend people follow that stuff because if you're not already at saturation with sort of, news on reinfections increase your chance of negative health outcomes they basically increase with every reinfection. Your odds of hospitalization go up, your odds of getting long COVID go up, like your odds of all the negative outcomes of COVID actually increase with each reinfection. So, anyway, I just hit a point where I was kind of like, okay, I get it. So I had to kind of back off of that, but I don't want people to think that it's over. It's by no means is over whatsoever. And again, I salute the people who are still, who else? Laura Myers on Twitter, Myers, still, reporting COVID stuff every day for years. It wore me out. I'll come back to it at some point, and I'm sure it's taken a toll on them. So, kudos to them for sticking with it and full support. There's nothing quite like a coming monster recession, depression in 2024-25, just as a neo-fascist second Trump administration comes to power. What a fucking disaster. You said it. I mean, I find usually the Democrats are there for the, the upswing of the cycle, the creation of more capital. The Republicans are particularly good at the phase where the capitalists have to destroy capital in order to get the system rolling again after a crisis of overproduction, which again isn't an issue in socialism because it's not run on a for-profit basis and you don't get that issue. But anyway, that's, I think, part of the two-party system, and I haven't done like an extensive analysis of this, but it has occurred to me more than once. It seems like the Democrats are the face more often than not of the kind of positive upswing, quote, economic recovery, whether it was Bill Clinton in the 90s, whether it was Obama in the 2010s. They get that kind of like, look, we're the good guys, building up the economy. And then, ooh, those mean old Republicans, economic downturn, recession. And it gets treated like, I remember this especially between Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. It got treated like, oh no, it's the Bush administration's horrible policies. Actually, no, it's the needs of the system to do this. Otherwise, it will destroy itself with overproduction, and basically capitalism will become even more obviously superfluous than it is. Anyone have a link to the story I was reading? I don't have a link. Let me see if I can get you a link. I mean, you could just look at it off of the headline. No, I don't have it, unfortunately. All right, where'd my Twitch window go? A little bit of mouse. Some people like the mouse noise, so good for you. I had a conversation with someone who tried to claim that quantitative easing was, quote, central planning. No, central planning is when production is actually like dictated according to a rational plan, not the vagaries of the market and, you know, venture capital sort of gambling on things. No, quantitative easing is imperialists trying to manage imperialism. They're trying to fiscally manage the late-stage, advanced, consolidated monopoly capitalism that we call imperialism in the Marxist-Leninist sense. But it is not central planning. This is like libertarians and other kinds of, quote, paleo-conservatives. In other words, like more petty bourgeois-minded, pre-imperialist capitalists, that they criticize the Federal Reserve and other products of the New Deal and how the imperialists stabilized the economy in the imperialist era of the 20th century. They criticize those things because they think that the economy should just be run like ascending capitalism, just this free-for-all roller coaster of, you know, boom and bust, completely unmitigated by any kind of central authority. Now, it's bad the way that it is. It would be even more chaotic if you got rid of something like that. As socialists, though, you know, it's like kind of like the people who confuse like taxes with socialism. That's not what socialism is at all. And so libertarians get this idea that like any management of the economy at all is socialism. And so you get this ridiculous hyperbole of like quantitative easing is central planning, it's communism. No, it's capitalism. The economy is owned privately, run for profit. You know, most of the people in the population have absolutely no say over production. This is most definitely not socialism. What it is imperialists trying to make their system a bit more stable, but there's a limit to how stable you can make capitalism. And, you know, they're trying to explore that. There's even an incentive for it not to be totally, you know, for those shakeups to happen. You know, they'll claim that the more fit enterprises get to buy up more of the stuff and it gets more and more consolidated. Eventually, the system trends towards a final crisis and a final crash that it absolutely can't recover from. And it'll probably at that point be at its most vulnerable that it has been since it was just setting itself up. You know, we were talking about this in the last stream, which I still have to post on the channel as of the time of this recording. Like I said, very hectic week. But we were talking about this in the last stream about, you know, at any given point, socialists could out-organize capitalists. However, the relative effort you have to put in to out-organize capitalists at their strongest is more effort than you would have to do to out-organize capitalists at their weakest. You know, in a moment of crisis, in a moment of embarrassment, in a moment of vulnerability, that's when you want to take your shot because it's relatively less effort is needed in a situation like that. Capitalism never ends itself completely. It can go into protracted crisis and chaos, at which point it just becomes overtly fascist, militaristic. You know, you get a police state that's disappearing people, etc., things like that. But they do not, you know, sort of willingly give up power unless challenged. And so that socialists still have to organize, build the class consciousness, agitate, educate, and organize. That's always what it comes down to in the end. You cannot, as the revisionists say, just, you know, sort of wait for capitalism to peacefully transition or anything like that. It just doesn't happen. All right. Yeah, I mean, somebody said it is central planning, but it's in the interest of big capital. I mean, even then, just kind of, you know, just kind of. Did Politsturm ever see your criticism about their article about Israel-Palestine? Yes, I understand they did 2 streams about it, one of which named me in particular. I don't really have, you know, we actually discussed that in the last stream, which my fault, I haven't posted it yet. But, yeah, I just kind of moved on. I moved on from that. It's unfortunate. You know, I think that I recommended their study group as a place that people might consider as their first thought. If they're looking for a Marxist study group, I thought it had several advantages of being international, and most of the people I know involved with it are pretty good. unfortunately, with their weird sort of left-com, both sides take on Palestine, Israel, that was a grave enough error that I actually unlinked them and will not be recommending them anymore. And I don't know, it's unfortunate, but that is the way it goes. If you get something like Palestine that fucking wrong, I really can't recommend it. So anyway, we've parted ways. But I was recommending them steadily for about 6 months at least, I think. And, if that doesn't earn you the right to at least have your criticism taken in good faith, I don't know what is. I was trying to tell them that both sides in a genocide thing was not going over with basically anyone in the S4A audience, and I wanted to give them that feedback for the sake of their organization. Unfortunately, I don't think it's as much of an organization as I actually thought it was. There are, I guess, some study groups, and there are people who contribute articles throughout the membership, but I think it's just like 1 or 2 guys at the top. It's not actually run on democratic centralism as far as what somebody was telling me, so I don't really know. But the reason that I was kind of recommending that more was it seemed more like a study group, but from that it sounds more actually just like a glorified YouTube channel. And anyway, so, that was what it was, and now we're back with not recommending any particular Marxist group. People can find what's out there and make a call kind of on their own with that. But anyway, question, does anyone know what's going on with EZLN? Yeah, so there was a statement put out, and I actually have a tab open on this already. So this is from radiozapatista.org, and I'm translating via Google Translate. So I don't have a screenshot, but just to read this out, and the English will be a little choppy. This is dated 5 November 2023, so 10 days ago. Fourth part and first approach alert several necessary deaths. That's the title. To people who subscribe to the Declaration for Life, we inform you of the following. First, a few months ago, after a long and profound critical and self-critical analysis, and after consulting all the Zapatista towns, it was decided to, well, it says disappear. I think they mean like, close down the Zapatista rebel autonomous municipalities, MARES, and the good government juntas. Second, all seals, letterheads, positions, representations, and agreements with the name of Mares or any of the good government juntas are invalid from this moment on. No one can present themselves as a member, authority, or representative of any Mares or good government junta. The agreements held before this date with NGOs, social organizations, collectives, solidarity groups, and instances in Mexico and the world are maintained until their expiration, but new agreements cannot be made with these bodies of Zapatista autonomy for the simple reason that they no longer exist. So basically, they get down to the bottom, and they say that the reason for all this, like shutting it down, is that there's complete chaos in their area. The municipal presidencies are occupied by what we call legal hitmen or disorganized crime. There are blockades, assaults, kidnappings, cobro de piso, forced recruitment, shootings. This is the effect of the protection of the state government and the dispute over the political charges that is in process. What is being confronted are not political proposals, but rather criminal societies. So, of course, we tell you that, unlike other years, it is not safe. So they're saying that basically it's being taken over with semi-organized crime, criminal societies, to an extent that they can't operate. So I don't know all the details there. So it says federal, state, and local military and police forces will not protect the civilian population. They have the sole purpose of stopping migration. That is the order that came from the North American government. As is their way, they have turned migration into a business. Human trafficking is a business of the authorities who, through extortion, kidnapping, and buying and selling of migrants, shamelessly enrich themselves. So we do not advise you to come unless you are very well organized to do so. So we're not waiting for you, but we are inviting you. The tentative dates of the commemorations are between December 23rd and January 7, the central celebration being December 30th to 31st and January 1st and 2nd. We will tell you the place later. But they add, although we want you to come, we actually don't recommend it. But even if nobody comes, they will put up photos and videos. So I guess they're folding because it's too dangerous. And, I guess a decision was made. Maybe we'll learn more details about, why they decided not to fight back, but to, close up shop and live to fight another day. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know. Did anyone see Bernie Sanders break up that fight on the Senate floor that was brewing over internet shit talk between the senator and a Teamster? I did not. Actually, I haven't heard that at all. Bernie Sanders took a break from defending Israel's genocide. Amazing. Bernie Sanders, by the way, one of the, quote, progressives in Congress who is not supporting a ceasefire. AOC, other members of the squad are supporting a ceasefire, which is what the resistance in Gaza is calling for, is a ceasefire. Bernie Sanders will not do that. And here's the thing, they're calling instead, he and Joe Biden are calling for a, quote, humanitarian pause. It's not okay to do a genocide even if you take 4-hour breaks once in a while. It's not okay. They need to stop. This time, as opposed to 2010, the new Tea Party movement, or whatever its new face is, will be in power rather than an outside minority. I mean, they pretty much already were with Trump. And if you didn't like what you saw under Trump, I certainly didn't, then get ready, because it's probably going to be just like that. And what's the Democrats' response? Fucking Joe Biden is their response. Bidenomics. You've got record inflation. You've got a paralysis of the housing market. You want to take credit for something in here? I would not do that. Democrats are up the creek without a paddle. It's like they're trying to lose. Hard to say. Okay, somebody else adding, the EZLN thing is complicated. They haven't disbanded as an organization, but they are dissolving the municipalities. They're going to release more info in the coming weeks, but it seems as though they're struggling under pressure from cartels, human trafficking, and general destabilization. Yeah. I mean, it would be awesome if they were strong enough to stabilize and lead a revolutionary fight back against all that. They maybe have calculated that that's not possible at this time, but I don't know. And yeah, maybe we'll get more info soon. Richard Wolff is one who is guilty of equating regulations as, quote, socialism. Yeah, I mean, I've been getting, for some reason, a lot of comments recently on an old, like 2-year-old, maybe 2.5-year-old video that we did, which was commenting on the entire Richard Wolff Destiny, quote, debate. I have many criticisms of Richard Wolff. He actually has a good education, like knows what he's talking about, though compared to Destiny, there's really no comparison, actually. But yeah, we need to stop letting bad information slide under the mantle of Socialism 101. Unless you consider Revisionism 101 to be equally valid, then, Socialism 101 is fine, but it's got to be accurate. You can give people beginner level info, but make it accurate. It's not okay to just pass revisionism off as like, oh, well, it's for beginners. Oh, so you want to waste their time and send them down the wrong track and then make it harder for everybody else that is not revisionist to then have to deal with these people 6 months later, and they're like, I know what socialism is. I learned it from this old guy who knows what he's talking about. And it's like, no, that's what we call a revisionist. And they're like, what's a revisionist? And then they get demoralized because they got to start over in learning what socialism is about, and it's super confusing. So, yeah, no, we got to hit back at revisionism. I mean, in a way, teaching revisionist, anti-Marxist ideas as socialism to beginners is, in a way, like the worst thing you can do, because that's precisely the people who are going to have the hardest time fighting back. So, yeah. I explained to my friend, I think this was the one talking about quantitative easing as, quote, central planning, that socialism usually comes in the form of land reform or the nationalizations of certain large industries, the, quote, towering heights of the economy. It's not just a switch that flips, and it can't stop at simply seizing political power. Expropriating wealth is also an act of seizing power at a certain level. Yeah, I mean, that's, there is the economy itself, that's where the main power is. There's also an adjacent movement to seize political power at the same time. These two things are connected. So yeah, that is correct. So somebody's asking, why do we have a Soviet logo? The hammer and sickle is not exclusively Soviet. It is a symbol that was used in a lot of 20th century and even 21st century socialism. It symbolizes the alliance between the proletariat, more urban workers, and the peasantry, more rural, kind of petty bourgeoisie as they become workers. So, you know, that's not as applicable in countries that no longer have a peasantry, but so actually, you want the actual story of why I started using that? Because we started out as a left unity channel back in late 2019, early 2020 when we were doing Facebook memes before we started posting theory and other, you know, videos on YouTube. And the anarchists were actually making the channel impossible to run. I, for a while, had a black and red flag that also had a hammer and sickle, which I considered kind of two-thirds communist, but I was trying to be somewhat inclusive towards anarchists. It quickly became apparent that was not going to be possible. I had to decide one way or another, and I went, you know, with Marxism, which is where my heart already was at that point. So that's why, and also because Bernie Sanders was running his second primary run at that time, and wanted to reassociate the word socialism with, you know, the actual transition to communism as discussed in Marxism. So there's the story. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, a humanitarian pause in Gaza is as humanitarian as stopping to reload your gun before you keep on shooting. Should also mention Israel has been attacking targets in Lebanon as well. Yeah, there are serious questions of, like, Biden is very old. It's actually a major concern. There were polls on this topic. Many people believe there's a decent chance Biden would not, just due to old age, like, last a second term. Actually, we covered this in a previous stream. I'm just typing in Biden age poll, but I think it's like a strong majority of Democrats. Biden is, so this is from August, so just a couple of months ago. Biden is widely seen as too old for office, and AP NORC poll finds. Trump also has problems of his own. So yeah, Americans actually agree on something in this time of raw discord. This is from apnews.com. Joe Biden is too old to be an effective president in a second term. Only a few years his junior. Donald Trump, though, raises strikingly less concern about his age. I think it's because Trump actually seems somewhat more spry, for lack of a better word, for as much as you can call someone in Trump's kind of shape spry. But Biden comes off like he's going to just fucking turn into dust at any moment, you know? He looks bad. He's also, you know, had, I think, a lot of COVID. I mean, Trump had COVID, too. I think he recovered a little bit better. Biden just seems, if you go back to like videos of Biden when he was first running, he has a lot more spring in his step than he has today. So anyway, let's see, were there some stats? Oh, there it is. 3/4 of U.S. adults say that Biden is too old for a second term. Yeah, so U.S. adults 77%. And then only 51%, still a majority, think that Trump is too old for a second term. But many more, like another 26%, think that Biden is too old. Even it's actually between Democrats, 70% of Democrats, it's basically the same for them. 69% of Democrats think that Biden is too old for a second term. And 71% think that Trump is too old for a second term. It's basically a rounding error. So yeah, 7 out of 10 Democrats think that both of them are too old for a second term. Of independents, it's 74% Biden, 48% Trump, so still about half. And then of Republicans, that's what's really dragging this down. 89% think that Biden's too old, but only 28%. In typical none of the rules apply to me fashion, 28% of Republicans think that Trump is not too, or sorry, only 28% think that Trump is too old. So in other words, 72% of Republicans think that Trump is not too old for a second term, even though he's like just a couple of years younger than Biden, but arguably a bit more energetic and coherent. It's funny. That was not planned, by the way. I actually just called Trump coherent in relation to Biden. Biden actually makes Trump sound coherent. If we're following through the logic of what I just said, and yeah, I guess that is the case. Like, I sincerely believe that. Like, Biden makes Trump look coherent. I never really thought about that before, but yeah, that's the truth. Yeah. Have I done a criticism stream of anarchism? Yeah, there's actually a whole playlist on the channel, Marxists on Anarchism or something like that. It goes back to Marx and Engels writing about anarchists, because anarchism is not a new phenomenon. It's been around as old as the other kinds of utopian socialism that Marx and Engels were criticizing. Marx and Engels were contemporaries of people like Kropotkin, Bakunin, Proudhon, and they had many exchanges with them. So, it's not exactly like a new subject, the Marxist criticisms of anarchism. But yeah, we've just look up anarchism on the channel. There's kind of a lot there. But we have talked about it in streams. There's something called, if you search on feral individualism, F-E-R-A-L, individualism, we read a piece from the anarchist library about just like going into the woods, like getting naked and like running around or something like that. That's the highest ideal for some of these people. And anyway, I mean, it doesn't really bear discussion. I don't want to dignify that with another response, but we did do another stream on that in the past, yeah. Biden is cooked. He's basically a ventriloquist dummy at this point. Indeed. Is Gaza rich in oil? I only ask because someone said that Israel as a state couldn't have been set up as a base for U.S. and European oil grabbing in the Middle East. Oh, that's absurd. So yes, first of all, there is petroleum deposits there, and I've heard natural gas as well. I don't know all the stats on it. But yeah, there is that there. The other thing is Israel is not just directly for the resource grab. That is part of it, but the broader purpose of Israel is to destabilize the region, to be smack in the middle of the Arab world as an extremely hostile presence and keep it divided and prevent it from, doing any kind of effective pan-Arabism or whatever. Anyway, it's to destabilize the region. But yes, my understanding is there is petroleum resources, fossil fuel resources in Palestine. And remember, most of what is called Israel today really is Palestine. Well, okay, all of what is called Israel today is Palestine, but even by the 1967 borders or whatever, even if you subscribe to the idea that there is some legit, speaking to the people that think Israel is some kind of legitimate thing, even if you subscribe to that, I mean, they've taken over so much territory illegally and occupied it illegally that, I mean, most of it is Palestine, really. So, yeah. Biden has regressed. Trump is just Trump. Nothing to regress to. I guess that's the secret, right? If you just kind of, the mouthpiece of the abyss, just completely unbridled chaos, it's impossible to tell a difference, for Trump. Trump always seems the same because it's just been equally chaotic from the word go. So about Palestine, there's oil and gas reserves. Fun fact, BP, British Petroleum, awarded a $1.5 billion contract to Rishi Sunak's wife's company, Infosys, to exploit the reserves. Feral individualism is just Walden for anarchists. Nice. Okay, Crunchy Asparagus, we hear you, man. This isn't your stream. There's 52 people in here right now. And, there's somebody who wants to, go toe-to-toe here. I would like to speak with you in voice chat. Noted, but this is sort of a group stream right now. So let's try to work with others in the community here. Wow, nice to know that I have to look into the geographical importance of Palestine more. Yeah. If you want to see some liberal hypocrisy in action, observe the response you'll get if you talk about the genocide in Palestine. Then tell them that you aren't going to vote for the Democrats in the upcoming election and compare their response. Seems like there's one thing they care about, and it is solely that you're going to vote for the lesser of two genocide enablers. Yeah. So, we're actually caught up with the chat, and we're only an hour into the stream, so that is tremendous. It's a quiet chat today, I guess. I don't know if it's just 'cause we didn't wait the extra day. But yeah, if people want to make some more contributions to the chat, that would be good. I can actually make a few more announcements. So if you go down the community tab, there is a fundraiser I would like to share, and might as well do it in the stream, for the illegal termination of union organizers. So this is a company in New Hampshire, Thomas Snay and Colby Champagne, two voluntary organizers and now former employees involved with a union campaign of Micros Components, a microchip processing facility that primarily does work for aerospace and military contractors such as Boeing, BAE, GE, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin. Thomas was terminated on the 14th of August, just 3 weeks after the union campaign became public knowledge in the plant. Colby was terminated on October 13th, being the other termination since the beginning of the campaign. Both of them were key organizers and among the most vocal supporters of the campaign. So reasonable claim to say that they were fired for organizing. Now, this may get sorted out with the NLRB at some point. A lot of times that takes 12 to 18 months, and the NLRB will say, hey, you were wrongfully fired, and order the employer to pay back pay for that entire time. Until that point, these folks have to eat. So, you know, head to GoFundMe. This started at $850. I think it was up to like $1,100 as I was looking at it. So thanks to people who have donated. And I know that there are some good comrades involved with that campaign and supporting it. So definitely these are some folks to give some attention to. What else do we have going on? Oh, there was some discussion of Trotskyism. So thanks to a patron for sending this in. There's a video that I can no longer find. It went private a while ago, and I get why. It was a bad... So there's a presentation being given in a room which was being filmed. There was a lot of noise from the projector. It was like just not great video quality. It was hard to hear the speaker. But they had this thing, a chart that at one point, basically from the mid-90s to the mid-2010s, there are actually more UK Trotskyist Fourth Internationals than there were British Trotskyist parties. If that tells you anything about the Trotskyist tendency towards splitting, I thought that was very interesting. And there's like kind of, except for the period between what? Like 1960 to about 90, like 60 to 90 more or less, there were significantly more groups or parties than there were Fourth Internationals, but then the number of Fourth Internationals actually exceeded the number of parties. Anyway, I always kind of wanted that chart again, and somebody found it, and then same patron actually made that into a comic, How Fourth Internationals Proliferate. Situation, there are 14 competing Fourth Internationals. Two people agree. 14? That's ridiculous. We need to develop one Fourth International that's based on the correct interpretation of Trotsky's theory. Yeah. Soon. Situation, there are 15 competing Fourth Internationals. Now, this is a Marxist-Leninist channel, not a Trotskyist channel. There are apparently, so a couple of people told me there was some clown running around in some internet comments trying to say that, you know, this channel is a Trotskyist channel or something. We've never been a Trotskyist channel. There's, in fact, out of over 750 videos on the channel, 2 of them are Trotsky audiobooks. One is just kind of a goof involving a weird joke about chewing gum. If the USA were to go communist by Trotsky, and another one is Fascism, What It Is and How to Fight It. And that's the extent that we have any Trotsky material on the channel at all. And some goof was trying to go around saying that this was a Trotskyist channel. People write all kinds of stuff in internet comments, don't they? And, you know, there were people pointing that out to me. I don't, you know, it's one thing if there is a large outlet saying it, which I thought, based on the way that this was being said to me at first, I thought that there was a case that there was a large outlet saying that. I might take a bit more interest in that just because it's interesting to see whose attention you draw when you're running a channel and what they might, what might be their motivation to try to, slander you. Random internet commenters with no influence or reach couldn't really care less about. But I appreciate people letting me know anyway. That's good to know. But people just come up with the wildest stuff. Like if this was a Trotskyist channel, wouldn't I be posting more Trotsky audio and fewer Stalin audios? Or is that just the perfect cover? Like that's what they want you to think. Am I just a covert Trotskyist posting Stalin audiobooks and no Trotsky audiobooks, or 2 over the entire 4 years, just to like cover my tracks so that one day I can reveal my true power level and stump for Trotsky. Okay. I don't know. This is why it's important to know what you're talking about in the world. Anyway, what else did we have recently? This was, I thought, an interesting flashback. I think this is from the New York Times way back in the day when Hitler was a thing. Centrists demand that Hitler make clear his cabinet policy. They condition necessary support in the Reichstag on the stand that he takes on democratic rule. Papen is seen in control. Nobody panic. Papen is in control. Believed to have the power to veto any radical move that the Nazi chancellor may make. 4 slain in party clashes. I feel like that alone kind of like undermines some of the sense of calm they're trying to promote. Red agitation for general strike fails. Labor unions come out against new government. Anyway, there was once upon a time, I used to think that World War II history was like a million years ago. But so much of this stuff, so much of the logic of late-stage advanced monopoly capitalism, aka capitalist imperialism, is just identical. Some of the clothing styles change, some of the technology changes, but the politics, like the fundamental class interests, have not really changed that much. And the politics that emanate from, sorry, I have like a stuffy nose today, the politics that emanate from those class interests, I mean, it's basically identical. And I don't know. You'd think eventually people would wake up from the nightmare of history, but I guess they just want another round. This is also my new favorite comment. As much as I don't like you, meaning me, you are the most consistent and theoretically advanced on this motherfucker. You are correct 9 out of 10 all the time. Okay, well, I hope that's not causing you to not like me. We didn't really get any details on what that was about, but I do enjoy that comment. I'll take it. I'll take your grudging support rather than your denialist rage. You know what I mean? I'd rather people just be like, I don't like you. And you know what? That's okay. I'm not coming out here to be disliked, but I'm really not coming out here to be liked per se either. I'm coming out to do some education, raise class consciousness, and no doubt we will meet some comrades along the way that, are on the same mission. But I would much rather have grudging support, like please admit that, than just raging out on me because you just can't bring yourself to be like, that guy's right. There's so many people that are like, yeah, that guy's right, but I'm just going to rage anyway and pretend that's not true. Not that I'm right all the time, I'm really not, but, we try to stay consistent and actually base our statements off of some kind of supporting evidence. Think it through, logical consistency, all that kind of stuff, and update our statements and views when they don't seem to match reality. This is called the scientific process. And yes, it can be applied to society, social change, sociology, class struggle, even revolutionary level social change. So, yes. And then I guess finally, actually, here's another one. Speaking of COVID, as we were doing earlier, credit to whoever made this one, because I was actually laughing out loud for quite a while. Remember to keep those respirators on as we go into probably another wave. We're pretty much, if you look at biobot.io/data and track the COVID wastewater, we're pretty much identical to the 2021 curve, except it's a little higher. The lull that we had this year was not as deep as the lull that we had in 2021. Overall, the same basic shape, where you get kind of a spike in the early fall, then a brief lull that doesn't go all the way back down, and then it's starting to climb again. And where are we? November 15. This is basically, the time where Omicron started in some places. I think it started in like South Africa and Europe, if I recall correctly. That was like late November, early December, and then by mid-December it was all over the U.S., and we had a gigantic spike. So probably another big spike coming in, as always happens in the winter. So far this year, there wasn't as much COVID spread as there was last year. 2022 was an unbridled shit show throughout the entire year. So this year is more like 2021. But remember, 2021 was followed by 2022. This thing is by no means over. And remember, let's put it up on the screen. Every subsequent reinfection leaves you, you're more likely to get a variety of negative health outcomes. So you can see there. So your first infection, you have a certain amount of risk of hospitalization. And of course, if you are hospitalized, your odds of long COVID go way, way up. If it's severe enough for you to be hospitalized, your odds of COVID are significantly higher than if you're not hospitalized. That's not to say, like, just avoid the hospital. That's not really the issue. It's the severity of the illness in the first place. But yeah, if your COVID is bad enough that you get hospitalized, your odds of long COVID, kidney damage, all this other stuff. So you got kidney damage risk goes up with each subsequent reinfection. Cardiovascular, blood issues such as clotting. So SARS-2 virus can cause various clotting issues. Pulmonary, that's lung issues. Fatigue, gastrointestinal, so your digestive system. Diabetes, so blood sugar. SARS-2 does attack the pancreas. And especially in children, it leaves children more likely to develop both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So this is not okay to just let it rip and let kids get SARS-2 a bunch of times, because you're going to create a lot more diabetic kids that way. Not every kid that gets SARS-2 will develop diabetes, but more of them will than would have developed it without the virus. That's what we're seeing. Raises your odds. And at the population level, that's where you see that manifest. You don't know exactly who's going to get it, but yeah. Mental health issues, neurological or nerve issues, and musculoskeletal issues, they all go up with each reinfection. So do not keep getting COVID, even if you're like, oh, I had it twice, I was fine. You're rolling the dice every time, and you're not rolling the same dice. You're rolling different dice each time, which actually make your odds worse. So a little bit of a PSA there on COVID. All right, coming back into the chat, what do we have in the chat? Wow. The goddamn white anarchists and social democrats made 99% Hitler trending because they said it's important to vote for even a 1% difference. Just dance. I mean, if that is your political philosophy, just admit you have completely capitulated. You know what I mean? You stand for basically nothing at that point. In reality, you are not fighting for a better world. Like, in any, well, first of all, you got to compare it against what you could be fighting for. And they just refuse to do it. They're like, no, we will work within the parameters of a collapsing system, judging what is possible solely by the putrid phlegm that this system coughs up. That's what they're basing it off of. And guess what? You're not actually resisting anything by doing that. You're not resisting anything. Resistance means fighting for your own interests, and it means thinking outside of the logic that is presented to you by your oppressors. All right, so people thinking in those terms are just not actually doing any resistance at all. Did I see yesterday's horrifying March for Israel? John Hagee, Christian Zionist, and raging anti-Semite. It was scary, bloodthirsty crowd. No, I didn't see it. But yeah, that's the thing about the Christian Zionists. They want Israel to exist, not because they love Jewish people and like really want them to be protected. They just want it because they think it's a prerequisite to like the rapture. And at which point all the Jewish people that they supposedly are such great allies of are going to be like, you know, judged by their God, I guess, violently. So yeah, that's not actually love for the Jewish people in any way. There are 25 Fourth Internationals in the UK alone. It gets very complicated. What is a Trotskyist? How different is that to Marxism, socialism? So the very short story on Trotsky is Trotsky was somebody who was active in the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party circle, same as Lenin and the Bolsheviks. However, Trotsky was a Menshevik for most of the time. He came over to the Bolsheviks way at the end, in 1917. And sorry, I'm like really stuffy today. So Trotsky came over to the Bolsheviks way at the end, and from there he did make some important contributions to the revolution, such as leading the Red Army. However, prior to that, Lenin gave many scathing criticisms of Trotsky, lumping him in with some of the worst kind of opportunists, muddlers, and general ne'er-do-wells that he was criticizing. So, I mean, for most of the time and up to 1914, 1915, Lenin was writing harshly critical things of Trotsky, including, what's the one? Cries for unity under... Oh, disruption of unity under cover of outcries for unity. That was like an hour-long just tearing into Trotsky specifically. So most of Trotskyism, his general thought on things, was not well regarded by Lenin. Like I said, he did come over to the Bolsheviks in the end and made contributions to the revolution, and I guess Lenin's opinion of him somewhat improved from that point on. However, you know, Lenin died very early on into the Soviet revolution, and a power struggle ensued. Some of the main individuals who were vying for power included Trotsky and Stalin. Stalin, of course, came out on top. And Trotskyism was pretty much soundly defeated. Anyway, as far as some of the specific things, most of what people call the differences between Trotskyism and, quote, Stalinism or Marxism-Leninism, I would say Trotsky is, in my opinion, oftentimes misrepresent what the differences are. Like, they will talk about socialism in one country versus world revolution, except that they're misrepresenting Stalin's position, I think, like a grievous fundamental way. Stalin, really, it wasn't Stalin's position that socialism could just happen in one country and like that would be it, neat and tidy. Stalin always, like, that I've seen, recognized the need for, like, you could build socialism in one country, but that really couldn't be the end of the revolution. That without continuing revolutions and without the support of the proletariat restraining their capitalist governments in the countries that haven't had revolutions yet, then the existing country where you were building socialism was basically doomed. It would be overthrown eventually. It was like inevitable. So you had to basically turn the tide of history against capitalism. The difference was basically more of like a tactics and strategy of Stalin wanted to focus more on internal construction first at that time, as Russia was way behind technologically and industrially, and also had just been through like a decade of war between World War I and then the Civil War for revolution. So it was more of a question of, you know, what do we do here? And, you know, Trotsky wanted to kind of more immediately jump to more revolutions. There's another channel, The Finnish Bolshevik, that does a lot of things that are critical of Trotskyism. I would refer you to that channel. We link to it off of the channels tab on the YouTube. youtube.com/@socialismforall. Go to the channels tab, and there's a lot of kind of Trotsky critical stuff on that channel. Yeah, such a covert Trotskyist that I've even tricked myself into thinking I'm an ML. It's like even parts of me, you know, I've got plausible deniability. You know, late at night I go into a trance and I break out the secret Trotsky journals that I hide from my other personalities. So yeah, no, this is how devious, you know, the international Trotskyist conspiracy is. You know, they will even advance their own Manchurian candidates within the Marxist-Leninist circles. The Trotskyite plot, he was Trotsky all along. That's right. I'm going to rip the mask off. 5-year anniversary, ripping the mask off. Von Papen and the SPD in Germany, that coalition, facilitated placing Nazis at basically all the levers of power within the Weimar Republic. Von Papen might have been in control, but look what he managed to achieve with it. And then, of course, there was the Reichstag fire when the Nazis burned down the German parliament and then blamed it on a Dutch communist. And then they got the Emergency Powers Act passed, think the Patriot Act, basically, of that time, which then gave Hitler tons of emergency powers, and they kind of went from there. So much for keeping that in check. So much of what Western Trotskyist organizations are based on maintains white supremacy with Marxist painting. It's been a while since I've really been remotely near any kind of Trotskyism. You know, I've seen Trotskyist organizations in the past, like the 2000s. Honestly, Trotskyists were the first people calling themselves Marxists who I actually ran into in real life, and they literally turned me off to Marxism. I at that time didn't understand the difference between Trotskyism and, you know, Marxism-Leninism, Marxism-Leninism, Maoism, whatever. I didn't, you know, left comms. Like, I didn't really understand any of that at that point. And they were so off-putting to me, the people that I met there, that I was like, yeah, I guess I'm not a Marxist then. And so, yeah, in a way, it slowed down my political education. Probably wouldn't have tried out anarcho-communism, you know. Probably could have skipped right over that. But thanks, Trotskyists. The fascism, What It Is and How to Fight It by Trotsky has some decent parts, but it's also kind of a mess in parts. It is a collection of essays, and somebody was like, how was this published in 1944? Trotsky died several years before that. Yeah, it was published posthumously. That is a thing that happens. But yeah, it is a collection of essays on fascism, and you know, it's been a while since I read that, and I haven't done a critical analysis of it. And before I read any other Trotsky, you know, I'd probably want to go back to what we have read and kind of do some critical analysis of that. My brother read that comment out for me while I was drip, and he laughed his ass off. That was a good one. My Iranian friend thought he wasn't a communist because he disagrees with revisionists and was told that was the proper line. Now he has been de-gaslit. I also recommended your channel so that he could learn more. Well, good. Thumbs up. I actually have my thumb up right now. Thumbs up to that. The deprogram guys did a, quote, recommended channels. No sign of S4A. That's okay. I don't recommend them either. But Hasanabi was on the recommended list. The more I hear from them, the more I'm out. Yeah, let me just take this moment to say, the deprogram bros, that's a solid no from me. Absolutely not. The more I hear from them and about them, the less I think anybody should be spending a single moment of your time listening to the deprogram, and that's what I've got for you today. The deprogram really seems to be turning into BreadTube. It's disappointing. Hakim was one of the early channels that got me into Marxism-Leninism. Me too. I used to listen to Hakim. He used to do reasonably okay videos, and, you know, it was a channel that was out there earlier on. It doesn't sound to me like they're doing great education, especially considering the comments we got when I discussed this at length in the last stream, which I still have yet to edit and post. Again, busy week. But I was like, yeah, is this Marxism? When Hakim was like, make sure you read the Quran every day. And also, Joram von Klaveren, my favorite Dutch right-winger. Like, what the fuck are you doing? So, yeah, the amount of comments defending that and the kind of quality of the arguments and the fact, I'll say it again, not a single one of the chuckleheads coming into the comments to defend Hakim and all of that mentioned Joram von Klaveren. Isn't that amazing? Why? Because it's indefensible. That's why. And none of you fucking cowards and just parasocial halfwits have really anything, to say on that point in support of your favorite, quote, Marxist streamer. If we don't hold each other to account, I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, though, I will kind of close this section by saying this. It is my firm belief that the deprogram bros will burn themselves out. I think that it's a matter of time before they just self-destruct. That's basically what always happens with opportunism and revisionism. It goes down in flames eventually from self-destruction. I can only assume that that is the track they're going down. Hakim, again, making a major foray in that direction, promoting a right-winger, and just saying, like, Islam good, read the Quran, it's my favorite book, and not what you would expect from a Marxist educator for reasons, again, discussed at length in the previous stream. So, yeah. Let's see. I was about to mention the recommendation video that Ugopnik of the deprogram did. I didn't actually watch the video because I didn't see S4A listed, but it seemed like a semi-bread tube promotion. They have all done product endorsements for money as well. Never go full bread tube. I recently downloaded Twitter to keep up with Palestine info. First of all, a lot of what you're going to get on Twitter with Palestine info is straight up misinformation, so be very careful with that, honestly. It's like, I don't know if it's even worth the work of double checking it. Is Blue Sky as good for that? I would say Blue Sky is 20 times better for that. Yeah, so yes, Blue Sky is much better. I've seen I actually haven't seen any misinformation on Blue Sky related to, well, anything, but including Palestine. And as we covered a few weeks ago, Twitter is now a disinformation central for people sharing videos of stuff that happened years ago and claiming that it happened, just recently in the war and attributing violence to people who didn't commit it, all kinds of stuff. So no, I think Twitter's actually pretty bad for keeping up with Palestine info, and yes, it seems like Blue Sky is better. I mean, there are some people who are super dedicated who can filter out some of the better news from Twitter, and they will post it over on Blue Sky and Mastodon. But yeah, I would be very, very careful about that. Because it happened to me, actually. There's somebody I DM with a lot. They shared some info about something, and I almost put it on the community tab, and it turned out to be complete misinformation. Something about Putin and Palestine. It was complete misinformation. And then I don't fault them. It's like they're just swimming in a sea of disinformation. And that it was a plausible enough story, but it happened to be untrue. And we actually wound up sharing something else on the community tab, which I did do a retraction of, which was about Algeria voting to enter the war on behalf of Palestine. That was actually picked up by even the MSN network was sharing that news story. So, I mean, there's a lot of disinformation, and you got to be really careful about it. Why did they ever change the name and icon of Twitter? That was not a good move. I couldn't agree more. The X logo makes it look like a porn site now. But why? It's because Elon Musk, back in the 90s, his first company was called X, and he wanted to, bring it full circle. It's a terrible name. Twitter was popular. It was a recognizable brand. Tweets was, a good word. Now, what do you call it? What do they call it now? Just posts? I mean, it's, generic. It had its own name for posts. He took a very popular and just basically committed brand suicide. It's exactly what you don't do. Yeah, he wanted PayPal to be called X. I don't even know if Musk is actually smart. I haven't really seen him do anything intelligent. Those Tesla cars also suck. There's about 1 million videos about the poor build quality, which I know that's a little different from design, but it's that's his company, and I'm not really actually seeing the high intelligence in practice from him on literally anything. Oh, the 99% Hitler thing is literally a Vosh take. Yeah, I mean, it's vote blue no matter who. No matter, it could be literally Hitler. It could be 99% Hitler, and they would still say vote for him if he was running as a Democrat. Yeah. I mean, it's when I was coming up and starting to pay attention to politics, anybody but Bush. That was the big slogan in '04, was anybody but Bush. Yeah, you can't actually like run national level politics on that kind of basis. Trotsky constantly switched his opinions and never had a clear line. A very confused man. I would support that statement. So somebody's saying, I think that the GDP is quite strong in the USA. That's not what you have to look at all. So the economy is on life support due to quantitative easing and a long-term environment of low-interest loans following the 2008, 2009, 2010, global financial crash. Now that they're tightening the interest rates, expect a lot of things to break. Many smaller businesses, especially in the tech sector, that were surviving off of these low-interest loans that can no longer refinance. So there were not that many corporate pieces of debt that were coming up for refinancing in the last year. There's a ton coming up next year and in 2025. So now that the interest rates are super high and these companies are going to be asked, they have to refinance because their previous loan expired and they have to get more debt to keep functioning, to fund themselves. They can't, many of them are not going to be able to refinance at the higher rates because the banks are tightening their lending standards. And they're going to say, okay, I know that 5 years ago or 7 years ago, we gave you money and basically asked you no questions. Like it was just, purely speculative, like based on nothing, like here, have some money, have fun, pay it back when you can. Now they're tightening up standards dramatically in this environment. So the cost of debt is going way up, the interest rate going way up, and it's not being given out to as many people. So in this much more restrictive environment, there's going to be a lot of businesses that have been coasting on low interest loans that are not going to make that cut and they're going to go bust. So that's kind of more the thing. It's not so much the, quote, national debt that is kind of a separate issue. You're going to have within the economy a lot of these, especially small and mid-sized corporations that don't have enough cash on hand to weather a storm. They're depending on more loans, and they're not going to be able to get them. They could get them in 2016 at like 2% or whatever. They're not going to be able to afford loans now under tighter lending standards at 7 or 8% or whatever. So yeah, you will see a lot of companies going under. That's probably going to start in earnest next year. And there's a video I was just watching actually about how a lot of banks are just closing customer accounts. This is news to me, but there's apparently a lot of banks just closing customer accounts because the customer does some purchasing activity that they deem, quote, risky. It trips something in their algorithm. And the bank has decided, by whatever metrics they're using, that that is, quote, risky behavior, that customer is more likely to cause some kind of a loss for the bank, and they're just cutting them off. And they're like, your account is gone. You can get your money in a few months, but like right now, you're no longer our customer. That's starting to happen. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of crazy stuff as the capitalists and banks, like, that financial sector in particular, start to try to cover up their asses and protect themselves against the upcoming losses, which now the writing is very clearly on the wall for that. So, yeah, anyway, there's going to be a lot of casualties of the more restrictive lending environment. Trotsky was very clever. I don't know enough about what motivated his flip-flopping, but I'd be interested in understanding the developments that motivated his rapid shifts. It sure makes me wonder. My Trotskyite friend often says that the USSR could have done much more to support international movements, but when I ask him, it comes to why Stalin didn't send millions of guns to every country existing. I think that's a specific enough thing where you could do an analysis like, here was a near miss of a revolution. Here's what Stalin could have done more of, here's what he didn't do, and here's why he said he wasn't doing it. If you want to lay that out, that might be worth like having a discussion about, but so many people just get into these like real vague generalities, and it's hard to, really do anything with that. Well, so there are people who gatekeep communism and Marxism for a reason. So Marxism is not an identity. It is a set of skills. Marxism is a set of tools. I mean, Marxism is a synonym for scientific socialism. So it's a kind of sociology. And it's a kind of a school of sociology that is also proletarian revolutionary ideology, and based in historical materialism, which is based on, well, it's an application of dialectical materialism into the historical development realm. And you have to actually study in order to be able to do that analysis, to learn the processes of Marxist analysis. So it's like saying, I am a chemist. It's not really an identity so much as it is, a statement of skill and knowledge. I mean, you could say, I'm a chemist having taken one chemistry class or none. It's not a regulated term. But are you a very good chemist? And no, not at that point. You might have a knack for it, but you really need to study to actually know what the hell you're doing. The baking soda and vinegar volcano just isn't going to qualify you for the big leagues. Hanging with the big dogs. Look what I can do. So, yeah, Marxism is a set of skills, and you have to actually study. So there are... but that's what we're trying to do on this channel, is we're trying to promote education, and we're trying to do public-facing agitation, rousing people to come around to their class interest and to draw out people's complaints about what's going wrong from their class perspective. And then education, trying to help fill in the gaps, and especially for people in the United States. You may not be that very well connected, let's say, is a gross understatement, to the 175-year history of the international communist movement. We're trying to help people, along with other channels and accounts and things, other educators that are trying to do a similar thing. We're trying to make all that more accessible to people so that the struggle improves and that people can learn Marxism, because that's the only way we're going to solve the political, socio-political, economic problems, the problem of ending capitalism, basically. That's the only way that we're going to actually get nearer to that goal. So, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, as far as gatekeeping it is important that people actually kind of know what they're talking about. Just using it as a way to insult other people who don't know as much, I mean, that's not comradely. We need to help each other out. But when people start asserting they know more than you do, and you're wrong, when actually demonstrably they don't know as much, and they are the ones who are incorrect about what they're talking about, that creates a problem for the overall learning environment. So, yeah, I mean, some amount of gatekeeping is important, and if you're involved in this community, you have to understand no investigation, no right to speak. You have to know what you're talking about. And if you don't, then just be here to learn. And if you say something that's wrong, be scientific, be prepared to get corrected, and accept that. You can be critical of it. Not every criticism is actually founded. Some criticisms are off the mark. That'll happen too. Doesn't mean somebody criticized you, you're definitely wrong. No, I mean, sometimes criticisms are also, off the mark. But yes, I mean, this is a community where truth kind of matters. So, not just any kind of bullshit dressed up as Marxism can fly. Feels bad for Finnish Bolshevik being the only good ML channel in that Ugopnik video he did on the pyramids list. Yeah, I'd love to hear what Finball actually thinks about the deprogram. I know he is not big on China. And that would be interesting, actually, because I feel like Finball is somebody who has been doing this for a long time. I think his channel got started in 2014. So that was 6 years before I started doing what I'm doing. And I think he does some similar stuff in that he started out with a sister channel, Marxist-Leninist Theory, which he would post machine-read, computer-read audiobooks on. And those are better than nothing, no doubt. But problem is, especially if you're reading off of Marxists.org, Marxists.org is a great resource and a great website on the whole. A lot of their files, though, do have typos. So whether it's missing punctuation or it's just missing a key word, especially with some of the writers that use very flowery and long-winded sentences and language, it can throw off the whole sentence. Where there have been many times where I've been reading out a human-read audiobook where I have to pause the recording for like several minutes just to decipher a sentence because it's like missing a word or two that is like pivotal for what the sentence means. And sometimes I wind up guessing, Rarely. I don't like to do that because I don't want to end up giving it a meaning that wasn't intended originally. But like once in a while, I just have to make an educated guess on what the missing word is. So if you're feeding that into a machine, it's not doing any of that. It's just reading it verbatim, which sometimes is unintelligible. At least passages of it will be. But like I said, it's definitely a massive step up over nothing. So Finball started out, just doing kind of video essays on aspects of communism in the Soviet Union in particular, and also now does human-read audiobooks like we do. And I think he does good ones. And, there's not really a need for me to duplicate what he's doing. Like he did, what was it, History of the CPSUB by Stalin. That's a super long audiobook. It'd take me like a month and a half to record that. He already did it. I don't need to do that. And people have been asking for strategy for the liberation of Palestine. There's already a human-read audiobook online by Foreign Languages Press YouTube channel. Go subscribe. If you like the stuff from Foreign Languages Press, they have done audiobooks of much of it, not all of it. And it's on their channel, which has like 300 subscribers. Go subscribe to them. It'll be some good stuff for you. But yeah, it's like, of course they want to name check Finnish Bolshevik, but like, what does Finnish Bolshevik actually think of the deprogram bros? And again, I don't mean to speak for Finnish Bolshevik. I would just kind of suspect he'd be a hell of a lot more critical than that. So yeah, they're turning Marxism-Leninism into pop culture. That's, the whole bread tube thing. And it's obviously not actual Marxism-Leninism. Ugopnik admitted in an episode that he spends Patreon money on bottle service at the club. Yeah, do you want to keep funding that? It's up to you. So deprogram was fine when they started. The problem is they attracted too many liberals. No, see, that's not the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is that they started becoming liberal in response to that. So you can attract all the liberals you fucking want, but you teach them. That's what you do. If you're in it for the money, though, like you look at Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is a great example of what they call, quote, audience capture. It's not fucking audience capture. That's a misnomer. It's not audience capture. It's, I'm doing this channel for clicks and donations and ad money, and I just want to keep getting clicks and donations and ad money. When that is your outlook, that's when you start playing to the audience and just telling them whatever they want to hear and not really challenging them. So that's what Jimmy Dore did when he went out to build a big audience after he left TYT. If he were to do something like we're doing here, okay, you want to break Jimmy Dore from TYT-style Democratic Party liberalism? Cenk Uygur was basically a Republican until Bush and Cheney era torture. That's when he broke with the Republican Party. Then he became a Democrat. And then he became a, quote, progressive. Dude, you were a Republican like 5 seconds ago. Anyway, so TYT starts taking Democratic Party money, $20 million. They endorse Hillary. So Jimmy Dore gets discussed. And at first he has a lot of support for that. He seems like a principled progressive who jumps ship. Then what does he do? He gets into a big pissing contest with Cenk and TYT, and he needs to be bigger and better. What's the only way to do that? By becoming like an actual socialist? No, you're never going to get the same amount of views. You got to do opportunism. So he starts playing to libertarians and MAGA people. And now his thumbnails are like National Enquirer covers. The anti-vax stuff that he went down. Bolsonaro's actually a decent guy. All the other stuff that he said. So, that's a very good example of just people telling you what they are in this for. So, hey, you start out authentic. You're a Marxist. You're actually teaching people some stuff about the USSR, and you're standing up for the name of Marxism-Leninism. Then you have an opportunity to make bank, and you go for it, even if it means you have to start preaching liberalism. So the problem is not really that they attracted too many liberals. They may have attracted a lot of liberals. There's nothing wrong with that. Then you educate them. That shouldn't make you abandon your Marxism. So, yeah, anyway. But I get what you're saying. Like, they started playing to the audience. But, no, you want to tell liberals what's up. Like, okay, here, liberals, here's why you shouldn't be liberals. All right? But, see, that might not get you as much donation money. hate to reduce it to that, but that's usually what the situation is. Black Redguard was very soft on the Hakim situation, saying that being religious and Marxist is understandable. That isn't even the issue. That isn't even the issue, as we discussed at length. First of all, I mean, it's a little bit of the issue. Like, I mean, Marxism is fundamentally, well, we've been over this a million times. Go back to Marx, Engels, Lenin. Like, the understanding was always that communists are atheists. And, people are like, oh, well, that's like a European thing, but in the Middle East, it's like okay to be Marxist and atheist. No, you don't suddenly start not being materialist and still call it Marxism just because you're in the Middle East. That's really not how that works. Islam, first of all, is another Abrahamic faith. It's not that different, in a lot of the fundamentals as Judaism and Christianity. No, you don't suddenly start considering Islam as being materialist all of a sudden. I mean, if you're going to call any sort of quasi-religious philosophy materialist, I mean, at least go with one of the non-theistic ones, like certain schools of Buddhism, which are more like a system of meditation, self-mastery, and personal philosophy. Or Taoism, which actually Taoism is probably closest to dialectical materialism of all because of yin-yang theory. It's dialectical and is a basically dialectical naturalistic philosophy. There are kinds of esoteric Taoism that do incorporate like a belief in immaterial things, but not necessarily. So if you're going to try to say that, anything is, any kind of religion is compatible with a materialist dialectical science like Marxism, probably something that is non-theistic like that, or at least that has non-theistic schools. That's going to get you closer. There's still going to be issues like the belief in a soul and whatever else. This is fundamentally idealist and non-materialist thought, which is going to hold you back more than you think. People are like, oh, I can believe in religious stuff. It has no consequences for my outlook on the world. Then why are you doing it? If it has no consequences on your outlook on the world, why are you doing it? No, of course it's going to interfere with taking an actually materialist view of the world. You can't both believe that immaterial deities and spirits actually rule the world and that worldly forces rule the world. Those are incompatible beliefs. All right, so no, being religious and Marxist, not so much if you're actually somebody who is within the party, communist, and trying to, actually advance those kind of analysis and development of theory. As far as being someone who is in a country led by Marxists, I mean, many people still have personal beliefs. It's very atypical for communists to do that. Again, because of, if you've read any Marx on religion, and we have a playlist on the topic, they're fundamentally incompatible. Anyway, saying that being religious and Marxist is understandable. So I would strongly disagree with that. And when you're an educator like Hakim, that's a no. But again, even if Hakim has some personal beliefs, honestly, I think that is fundamentally anti-Marxist, and, you have to confront this in yourself. I've had to confront it in myself. What are the remnants of superstitious religious idealist thinking? And how do I eradicate those from my own mind to see the world more as a materialist? That's part of the introspection you should actually do as a Marxist. That should be part of your process. But that wasn't even the issue with the Hakim post. The Hakim post was flat out promoting religion. So what the party should actually do, or what any serious communist educator should do, is try to lead people out of it. It doesn't mean every single person you talk to, you have to, crush with facts and logic or whatever. Like, you don't have to be an insufferable asshole to, like, every single person that expresses a belief. That's not necessary and probably will be counterproductive. However, you do want to lead people in the other direction, like when they start talking about religion, change the subject to more of a secular analysis. So leading people away from ignorance, superstition, idealism, and, theistic notions, we want to go away from that. And he was doing the exact opposite. So fundamentally, that was the issue with what Hakim was doing there. And just to make that clear, as Marxists, we want to either leave it neutral or pull people out. He was literally positively endorsing that. So anyway, as a kind of role model, just promoting it as a source of strength and resistance. I mean, are there religious people who are involved in anti-colonial struggles? Yes. Are they Marxist? They're the least likely to be Marxist. So if you're a Marxist-Leninist educator, if you're just some random Islamic resistance educator, fine. But that's a separate issue. So I just wanted to be clear on that. That's the issue. Communists are supposed to lead people as much as is actually possible, feasible, without causing a massive issue. Lead people away from religion, not fucking towards it. That's the criticism. All right. I liked the individual channels of the Deprogram Bros and the first episodes of the podcast, but they sold out for that BreadTube money. Hassanabi has been good on Palestine, though, at least. I mean, Chris Hedges has been good on Palestine from what I've seen. It's actually not hard to be good on Palestine. That was another, what made Politsturm's left-com bullshit on that, that much more grievous, but yeah. Oh, no kidding. PayPal terminated Elon Musk when he started the X idea over there. Is that what it was? I hadn't heard that. Elon benefits from his father's emerald mine. He is not a genius. I think he denies that, but yeah. I read that the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, considers Jewish Voice for Peace and the Palestinian youth activists as hate groups. Yeah, we have a post up on the community tab about how they've been actually going to, or writing letters at least, to college campuses, trying to get them labeled as terrorists and stuff. And thank you again, mods, for keeping things moderate. Things are going pretty smoothly so far. There's so much... That's a good one. There's so much writing on the wall. There's hardly any space left. Nice. Even earning $70,000 and up in a year isn't enough to survive in the USA, which is an average of $30 an hour. I'd say it's enough to survive, but it isn't enough to... it's definitely enough to survive, because I definitely survive on way less than that. But even at that level, the way that people tend to spend at that level, they're still in a precarious situation. If you were extremely frugal, if you lived like a person that was surviving off of 30,000 or less, you could definitely make it on 70,000 pretty much definitionally. But yeah, you would have to not participate in US culture the way most people at that income level do. It depends. I mean, some people have a lot of debt. You might have medical debt. You might have a lot of student debt. In which case, yeah, I mean, the 70,000 a year, you're just kind of servicing your debt in some cases. But as far as housing goes, and again, wildly distorted housing market, even adjusted for inflation, and even adjusted against income levels, biggest housing bubble in history, has not popped yet, is about to pop in the next year or two. It's peaking and starting to decline on the West Coast, in the Southwest, Texas, some parts of the Southeast. The Northeast is still pretty much untouched, and the Midwest is still pretty much untouched. Prices are not declining yet, and in some cases, they're actually still rising. But, this is how recessions can happen or start. They start regionally, with some of the softer areas going first. And, it's like they just don't learn. They just don't learn. After 2008, the massive inflated prices, and people are convincing themselves again, just 15 years later, prices are going to stay high forever. No, they're fucking not. They're not. We just went through this. It's amazing to me the amount of people who participate in capitalism as capitalists, as investors, who don't fundamentally understand the system that they're involved in. Now, some do, and those are, very cynical, class-conscious people. But there's so many people that just get into this magical thinking, I made money. And it's very kind of sentimental and emotionally driven. It's just I'm going to make money on this thing that I bought. And it's what do you mean I lost money? That's not possible. Yeah, actually, that's, capitalism. Millions will enter, few will win. I don't know. It's just, there's so much about this. If I wasn't doing this channel, my head would have exploded like 3 years ago, probably. You know, this helps keep me somewhat grounded in reality, talking with you all and just having this back and forth, because it's like the amount of just insane bullshit going on is head spinning. So it's nice to have comrades at a minimum to have some rational discussions with about it. I was probably going somewhere else with that, but I don't remember now. Oh, that's where I was going. Housing market. Yeah, so crazy inflated housing market. You have to be making about $110,000 in many places in the country to afford the median house price. So we're in the situation where investors bought up about a quarter of the housing stock in the country, and then a lot of it's sitting vacant, and people, like, the housing market is just slowed to a crawl. There's no, like, very little inventory. And again, in some areas that's starting to get dumped now, but it's just starting. The crash has not yet happened. It is like the roller coaster has just reached the top of that initial, you know, the hill that it climbs. The first few cars are just starting to come over on the downward side. That's where we're at. The free fall has not yet begun, but as these investors dump these millions of properties that they bought up, yeah, I think it's about 24 million of the properties are investor owned right now. Now, not all of those are going to be sold off, but a good chunk will. And, you know, even if 10% of them sell off, that's a ton of inventory getting dumped on the market that's going to kill prices, which again is good for people who are actually trying to buy for their own use. It's a significant amount that, like, you're just expected to buy your own house, except for the last few years, that's been completely unaffordable. Again, you have to be at like the 90th percentile roughly of income to afford the median house on average in this country. So yeah, on 70,000, you'd have to really get a crappy property just to keep a roof over your head, unless you want to rent. And again, rents have been at record highs as well. All right, so we're getting to the point where I said we're going to absolutely call this at 2 hours. Let me get caught up with the chat, and then that is going to be it for today's stream. We'll be streaming again next Wednesday because Thursday's a big holiday, and obviously you can debate the merits of that holiday or not. Fact is, it is a big holiday. Pre-Christmas, basically, that's how I think of it, is like pre-Christmas. I actually find the period between Thanksgiving and Christmas enormously stressful, as far as, the way people in the dominant culture behave, which, of course, you have to interact with many of them from day to day. It's like this just blind rush. You just had pre-Christmas, then you have like a month of frenetic preparation for actual Christmas, and then fucking nothing for several months after that. Seems like that could be balanced a little better, but yeah. Foreign Languages Press is very nice and well organized too, and all the PDFs are good. Iskra, Peaceland, and Bread is publishing the complete works of Stalin, etc. They always have the PDFs for free as well. Yeah, I'm aware of Iskra. Iskra, of course, was the Spark in Russian, the name of the journal that Lenin started. People have resurrected that name associated with the Peaceland and Bread thing. And yeah, I've been on their website. I haven't seen as much of their stuff, but I should probably go back because there's probably more stuff up there now. I'm surprised Ugopnik didn't mention your channel in his video. The deprogram links your audiobooks on their Reddit. I don't know if that's them personally doing it. Those guys may have some issue with me. I honestly would not be surprised if they had some issue with me that led him to consider it and not include it. Because that's not just sheer vanity. The channel is up over 18,000 subscribers. It is fairly well known at this point. And like you said, they link it in some of their social media. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they don't feel I'm a trustworthy dude bro. So, I'm not in the inner circle, and frankly, I'm not looking to be. So. Though, I would love it if they came back to working within anti-revisionist positions, but I say that out of I think with the path that they're headed down, I don't expect them to do that. I mean, there's the Hakim and apparently the constant Dungism, but also, it's like JT is in CPUSA. I know there are some good comrades in CPUSA, but like, at what point do you have that much reach? I mean, he has over 1 million subscribers on his main channel. At what point do you start going, hey, we need to completely, get new leadership in the CPUSA, etc. Just going along with that kind of makes you complicit in the ongoing problem that is CPUSA. Is there an issue you take in particular with Ayn Rand? She's a fascist, or was a fascist, and objectivism's philosophy of rationalism and self-interest as an individual value for life. So I actually do act in my rational self-interest, and I promote that to other people as well. The thing is, Ayn Rand was a fascist stumping for capitalism. So in capitalist society, there are other subsets of interest, but the kind of what we call the dominant contradiction, major contradiction, is class. So there are other very important ones, such as race and gender, that will determine various factors of life. Class, overarchingly, in almost every case, is going to determine your situation and circumstances more than any others. There are some situations like race in the United States that has very racist policing. I think I was looking at something that said even more affluent Black Americans are like still just as likely in some cases to be, arrested or assaulted by police and things like that. So anyway, but overwhelmingly, what single status determines the most of your conditions, has the biggest influence on your conditions, is class. So fascists are there to defend capitalism in crisis. What's actually in my rational self-interest is my class interest as a proletarian more than anything else. Hence, I'm a communist. Hence, I'm doing the stream that you're in. So that's why all this is happening. And I promote other proletarians learning how to correctly identify, become conscious of, this is what we call class consciousness, become conscious of and identify what your class interests are, and then how to get educated and organized to actually fight effectively for them. So Ayn Rand is a fascist. I mean, the idea of self-interest, if you can apply it to class interest, is fine. As far as just being some sort of isolated individual and denying the existence of social statuses, that's complete horseshit. Like, it's just utter nonsense. People don't exist as free individuals just sort of all randomly interacting with each other. That's not how society works. Society has classes and races and other social statuses which actually material impact people's experiences. All right? You can take issue with it. You can say, oh, I don't see race. I don't believe in it. It's a social phenomenon. It is real to that extent, and it actually does determine material conditions. And those kinds of prejudices are baked into the system by capitalists. So, and you see that now with AI. The AIs are being trained to be racist and all the other stuff that is, the humans who administrate the system are already trained to do. Now they're automating those biases, etc. So just trying to do the libertarian, like, oh, I just think everyone's an individual, that doesn't really work. Okay, so you have major social statuses, class being a material one. It's your relationship to the means of production. Do you own the means by which the goods and services you produce in the world that are value that gets circulated and traded in the world and consumed eventually? Do you own that, or does somebody else own it and they tell you whether you are allowed to access it or not? They hire and fire you. So if you don't own your own means of production, you're a proletarian, and guess what? That's like 90+% of the U.S. population right now. That's the class composition of the U.S. And then you got about 9% of the country is petty bourgeoisie. They own some small amount of capital, nothing major, maybe a small restaurant, a dry cleaners, a nail salon, a couple of apartment buildings, stuff like that. And then you have the big bourgeoisie, the 1%. Then, of course, you have the 1% of the 1% and all that. But basically, you got 10% of the population that's petty bourgeois or big bourgeoisie. 9 out of 10 people are non-capital owners. And what's in our actual self-interest in society is liberation of the individual through liberation of the class. That's what actually works. So anyway, that is the deal there. But yeah, Ayn Rand had this sort of denial of society itself, and just thinks it's just all against all and individuals against individuals. That's, again, nonsense. That's not how society works. I started as an agnostic. I became more and more materialist the more I learned Marxism, and I don't mind. That's a good thing in my opinion. Yeah, people try to do the thing of like, it's like positively atheist, anti-theist, agnostic. Look, if you're not promoting religion and sort of, believing in, praying to gods and all that kind of stuff, believing in the soul, all these other like anti-materialist concepts, you're in the ballpark, okay? I don't think that there, you can have a subgroup if the agnostics and the atheists want to have a conversation, but I think a lot of people in that general ballpark have a lot of overlap. I don't think there's like the hardest lines, drawn between all of that stuff. Yeah, so seeing Taoism and some kinds of like non-theist Buddhism as a, quote, religion is accepting the white supremacist colonialist framing of these philosophies and practices. Yeah, there are aspects of, again, Taoism is not one thing, Buddhism is not one thing. There are different schools and strains and splits over centuries and millennia of those things being practiced. But yeah, they don't correspond one-to-one in any way with like the monotheistic notion of what a religion is. Yeah. Yeah, I know Hakeem is a big Gaddafi promoter. He's been consistent on that for a long time. If you want to know more about this, read Socialism and Religion by V.I. Lenin. That is in our Socialism and Religion playlist. It's pretty easy to get through. There's like a dozen and a half texts in that. Marx, Engels, Lenin, Rosa Luxemburg. Learn the difference between a personal belief and clericalism. Clericalism is when religion and religious authorities get power and privilege within society. Socialist society completely gets rid of that and makes, religious or spiritual questions more of a purely personal matter. Although, again, even in that situation, it behooves a leading communist party over time to promote materialist, scientific, atheistic propaganda over time, because you want to, again, bring up successive generations further and further away from those religious superstitions and idealist notions of the past. That's going to help you advance the kind of thinking required to cement and build upon the revolution and keep those gains. Okay, we got a couple of people. So I think both of you are patrons. Just DM me. Anybody who's a patron, DM me for a Blue Sky code. I'll give you one right away. Or like within a day. I check that pretty regularly. Didn't the deprogram literally have bad empanada on? Yes. Now, there was a time I didn't realize how toxic and obnoxious and just generally stupid bad empanada is. But, yeah, they just recently had him on, I think. Have I yet read about the budget crisis in DSA by the Red Star Caucus? No. That is, I have it in my things to make community posts out of, and I have not gotten to it yet. I try to only put up one, maybe two of those a day, and there's just been other stuff I've been putting up, but no, I still have the link, though. Thank you. Politsturm is a LaRouche thing? No, I was talking about the deprogram. And no, I'm not saying that they definitely are. I'm saying that you have all those LaRouche people like Infracell that's doing the China and Islam and all that stuff thing. I mean, it's a big contradictory LARPing mess. But I mean, some of the deprogram was starting to go towards somewhat similar things. I was saying we're going to find out that's a LaRouche thing at some point. It's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but in this world, like, who even, in this kind of environment, who even knows? I don't know how prices in California can get any higher, but then the housing market surprises me. California is one of the areas where prices are starting to come down in the housing market. They're going to be leading this recession. one of the areas. Texas is another big one. But yeah, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California, Arizona is a huge one where prices are crashing. Las Vegas. No, but this was like the peak, just happened recently out there, and prices are starting to come down now. A lot of the, again, Midwest and Northeast still going up or just leveling off. So that's going to hit there a little bit later, but once it gets going, it's going to probably spread like wildfire, the price crashes. I will make money. Oh no, I lost it all. Yeah, many petty bourgeoisie would have said it something like that. The amount of times I see posts in, quote, leftist spaces of grifter types voicing, quote, support for Palestine, and there's so many comments like, OMG, so based, this, get this person in power now. It's like, guys, they're manipulating the situation to further their own interests. It's not hard to figure out what a popular stance to take is. Yes, I mean, in this case, the popular stance on the left is also the correct one. This situation has been going on for like 75 years. Very, very simple to, just identify that and say it. But yeah, I agree. You can't just go off of like, oh, they had this position on this once. No, you have to actually examine a person's thought process and over time and stuff. You are welcome for the stream. Giving Ayn Rand education was the worst mistake Lenin and Stalin made. The funny thing about Ayn Rand is she bitched about welfare her whole life in the U.S., and she lived her elder years on the U.S.'s welfare system. I guess she would just say that she was just a victim of the system, forced onto welfare. Individual self-interest is the only self-interest. That's weird. So I guess racism isn't real, and people who are in a work situation, who all can be hired and fired by the boss, they don't share a set of relations to the means of production? Yeah, I think they do. I think they do. Thanks for trying to play, but go away now. I found your channel while looking for Parenti's black shirts and reds, and I haven't looked back to the liberal anti-communist left that is running rampant in the online left and podcast world. I got so tired. Listening to smart people have generally good analysis stopped short of questioning capitalism. It's another reason I started doing this channel. I couldn't find enough of it either, and so I wanted to contribute to being part of the solution here. Yeah, like race is not biologically real. The differences that constitute race on a genetic level are actually extremely shallow. Like people of different races are actually overwhelmingly more similar than different, but it becomes a social phenomenon because capitalist society makes it a real social phenomenon and acts as if it's real. So there's a difference between natural facts about the material world, and then there are social facts which are made real due to social property and social behavior and shared experience that way that exists more in the imaginal ideological realm. There is a false empowerment in the kind of Ayn Rand individualism that this person is trying to promote. It reduces the person to their most powerless state. Yeah, I mean, I got news for you. The capitalists that actually run this society do not do so on the basis of just being an individual. They're not because then you go down well, how would that be? And then you start thinking about well, they must be of some superior race, or there must be something biologically innate about them. No, they inherited a lot of money from their daddy because their daddy was on the side of the guns during the slave years or whatever. You know what I mean? It's class determines the majority of a person's experience in reality. Then you have other important social statuses as well that determine your material circumstances. And yes, people actually do share, they just make this assertion. When you say the dogma, quote, group self-interests, including class interests, aren't a thing. Individual self-interest is the only self-interest, unquote. You are just mouthing a talking point. There's nothing backing that up. It can be torn to shreds immediately. You're just parroting libertarian talking points. That's it. And who does that serve? It serves the people who are already in power because, as another commenter said, it reduces you to your most powerless state as an individual. You ever heard of strength in numbers? As an individual, there's the number is 1, which is in fact the loneliest number. And you can't really do much on a societal level. So, try thinking before parroting the libertarian talking points. Who are you helping in the end? Again, you're helping the capitalists who already run society because you're reducing people's ability to challenge their power. Yeah, and also, if group self-interest didn't exist, then colony species like bees and ants wouldn't exist. Also, if it didn't exist, then your parents would have left you on a cliff after your birth instead of raising you. Right. Human beings cannot exist as sheer individuals. It's not really possible on any kind of like a widespread level. So you get these LOLberts. There's a lot of overlap between the LOLbertarian community and the survivalist community because it's all this rugged individualism. They have chugged the rugged individualism Kool-Aid so hard their whole life that it's like, well, now I have to be the picture of ruggedness. And I got to go out and I have to buy my Berkey water filter, which was made in a factory by a bunch of workers working as a group, that was transported here by a trucking company that was working as a group. And I'm going to, through all of these commodities I'm consuming, I'm going to become the perfect rugged individualist. No, sir, you're a tragic victim of libertarian, neoliberal propaganda that tries to strip you of all your social ties, all of your social strength, all of your natural inclinations towards asserting power as a group, which is the typical thing for humans to do. Einstein indeed was a communist. And hats off. And we have actually an Einstein audiobook, Why Socialism, up on the channel. It was one of the very first audiobooks I did. Tesla, also the actual Tesla, also admired the USSR, especially Lenin and Stalin. Did not know that. Workers in a free market have the right to advocate for their interests against business owners. And you know what the most effective way to do that is? In a group. So yeah, workers try to unionize. That's how they're actually effective. That's why companies fight it so much. Why do you think the employers fight unionization so much? Because it's effective. Because it's in their interest, their diametrically opposed interest as capitalists, to fight the union. This person is so confused. Honestly, I'm glad you stumbled in here because we're probably telling you more truth in these 20 minutes than the LOLbertarians that have been miseducating you and propagandizing you have been giving you in the last 5 years. Let's assume this person is in good faith. They believed what some libertarian has told them. Let's approach this. Workers in a free market have the right to advocate for their interests against business owners. Yes, again, the most effective way to do that is in a group, aka labor union. That's, if you just go up against the boss yourself, you're most likely to be ignored and or fired. If you do that in a group, what's the benefit? Well, the group can threaten to walk out. And without workers, there's no profits. So yeah, that since group interest, the strategy of working together among all the people who share a common relationship to the means of production, the proletarians. Okay, I mean, are you following along? So it doesn't mean that they have the right to impose that via law. So if workers, proletarians who have to sell their work to live, why would they not have the right to advance their interests when via the law, when capitalists, a tiny minority of the population, does currently have the right to advance their private property interests under the law? What kind of sense does that possibly make? If you believe even remotely in anything resembling democracy, you have 9/10 of the population who have nothing and have to sell their labor power to get by for wages. And then you have, 1 to 10% of the population, 1 in 10, who owns the means of production, and it's the 1 in 10 that the law favors? How does that work? If the workers say, hey, we actually paid the bills in this place by doing this stuff, and they call the police and they're like, hey, police, they're trying to fire us. Yeah, the police work for the capitalists because that's whose side the law is on in capitalism. So in fact, we have the situation where the capitalists, a tiny minority of the population, have the right to impose their property interests, their class interests, on the overwhelming majority of the population via law. So maybe reformulate your outrage and get back to us. All right. I'm not even an objectivist, but I find objectivism more internally consistent than Marxism. I would bet you almost anything in this world, you know virtually nothing about Marxism. Okay? So it may be true that you find objectivism more internally consistent than Marxism, because having zero knowledge of Marxism would leave you knowing nothing about it and having no basis for comparison. But please at least be honest about that, because the kinds of stuff you're coming up with makes no sense at all. All right. Hope this is helpful, and, happy to speak some truth to you here, because the capitalists that are trying to get you to believe in their system do not have your best interests in mind. They want to exploit you. Yeah, as Health Revolt points out, wouldn't rational self-interest preclude 90% of the population working for 1% of the population to destroy the planet for profit? I really hate human nature arguments in capitalist apologia. Yeah. Publicly funded healthcare system is overwhelmingly popular and is in everyone's self-interest, yet it is not a reality. Yes, another example of capitalists using the law to advance their private property interests over the vast majority of the population. Imagine Tesla going to Russia instead of the US and becoming an electrical engineer during the USSR years. Yeah. Imagine thinking that, quote, individual choice and responsibility and, quote, self-interest are real. Yeah, I mean, as an isolated individual, these things are basically meaningless. That's always in relation to a group. But see, this is the basic problem of libertarianism, is it has this metaphysical approach to, like, freedom. It's just this fixed concept that isn't context dependent. No, freedom is in relation to something else. And specifically what libertarians use freedom as a buzzword for is private property, capitalism. So, once you strip through the sort of mystification that they put on top of it, it's naked property relations in the end. Oh, okay. All right. So finally, the comment about climate change was referring to how, when you investigate the causes of climate change, you will inevitably conclude that capitalism is the culprit. Yeah, I agree. So you're saying that may be turning some climate scientists socialist, like they see the need to eliminate capitalism because they are concerned about climate change. And yes, you're not going to solve climate change under capitalism. If capitalism could solve climate change, it would have done so already. It's in its interest to do that, actually. However, it is outside of its ability to do it. You cannot run a decentralized, unplanned, for-profit system that booms and busts and has the kind of frenetic competition that capitalism has. You can't do that and have the kind of plan necessary to end climate change. Yeah. If it could, it would have done that, because it's, in its interest when climate change is basically undermining the material basis for human and to some extent mammalian and to some extent all life on this planet. So it's definitely in its interest to do it, but it's outside of its ability to do it. So yeah, that could lead some climate scientists to become socialist. However, they might realize, hey, we have to do something about this, but they may not get it that you can't just regulate capitalism away. You can't just wish capitalism away. All the other revisionist ideas, these people have to be shown that there's, basically, they have to be shown that there is one way out of capitalism, and it involves a hell of a lot of organizing. That libertarian chatter has shown up in my chat and literally denied that Israel is genociding the Palestinians. Well, it was good fodder, at least, for me to do some modeling of how to, discuss libertarian nonsense. So, all right, we're getting near the end of the chat, but let's just see what else we've got. As someone who lives in Utah, the theocratic state of Mormondom, I see something interesting as far as the housing bubble goes. Families have 5+, sometimes up to 12 children who all want to stay in Zion. Housing in Salt Lake City is as expensive as California. There's built-in demand for housing by natural growth, but an impending natural disaster due to growth, the Salt Lake State drying up due to poorly planned growth. Yeah, almost like humanity, somewhat semi-intelligent advanced primates, can't just run around with the kind of advanced technology that we have without some kind of a plan for it and not kill ourselves with the unintended consequences of that technology. All right. Capitalism has been great in making a ton of really interesting stuff, which has truly brought a lot of convenience, particularly through the 20th century. You know, if you compare life in the 1970s, well, in many countries, but especially the more advanced ones, to like life in the 1470s, the amount of convenience in so many areas is tremendous, just even basic hygiene, for example. So, yeah, I mean, capitalism has done some really good things. The problem is it has really reached the limit of where its contributions are beneficial and must be replaced with rational planning. You can't have this level of technology and not destroy yourself, burying yourself in garbage, toxic waste, and destroying the fabric of the biosphere. As an aside, the Mormon Church acts as a weird economic stabilizer during downturns. You know, being an untaxed trillion-dollar grift will do that. That's how I survived 2008 as a trade worker who got to stay busy on church-funded projects. Interesting. Capitalism wouldn't exist without externalities. That's them trying to put the costs of things onto things outside the enterprise. And the environment arguably represents the largest externality that exists under capitalism. I mean, yeah, the environment is literally like everything else but the enterprise. So, yeah, absolutely. All right, we are going to call it there because I have caught up with the chat. I want to really thank everybody. This was a good stream. And, hey, we didn't do a full 3 hours. We did like 2 hours and 40 minutes. What's the actual pre-edit time? 2 hours, 41 minutes here. So I want to thank everybody. We even reined it in a little bit and still had a really good stream. So thank you. I will edit the old one and this one and get it up on the channel as soon as I can. I'm going to really have my hands full for the next couple of days, but I'll try to do that over the weekend sometime, hopefully. But I want to thank, again, the patrons and buymeacoffee.com supporters for their contributions. We showed their names earlier. Thank the mods and thank everybody else who came in and contributed to what we've got. You know, I could do a stream of just me talking to the computer, but your contributions make this so much richer, and I like to help to facilitate this environment for people to not feel like you're alone in understanding and having some consciousness of what's going on, because you're not actually alone. And this is why we've got to network with our local left. Yes, our local lefts are not going to be all Marxist, especially at this point, but get out there, see what parties, organizations, and individuals are active in the struggle, network with people, and the next time something pops off, which might not be that long, again, with the impending economic crash, you will have a lot of contacts, and you'll have already had conversations and some bonds with people. If you fall into trouble, if they fall into trouble, you can help each other out. This is the kind of thing we need to be building on the left. And again, just thanks. You know, you're all part of my network too. I'm facilitating this thing, but you know, I value each of you as well. So thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.